I caught my wife cheating and she left me for her younger lover. It all started with the small things, the late nights at work, the guarded phone calls, the sudden interest in going to the gym. I should have noticed the signs earlier, but I was too busy with my own life to give them much thought. I trusted her, and that trust blinded me to what was happening right in front of me. Julia and I had been married for 8 years. We met in college, dated for a few years, and then tied the knot. We were the couple that everyone envied, happy, successful, and seemingly perfect. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, both had great jobs, and life was good, or so I thought. About a year ago, I started noticing a change in Julia. She was more distant, less interested in spending time with me. She would go out with her friends more often, and when she was home, she seemed preoccupied. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that it was just a phase, that maybe she was stressed from work or just needed some space. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The first real red flag was when she started going to the gym regularly. Julia had never been into fitness before, so her sudden obsession with working out struck me as odd. She would spend hours at the gym, sometimes even going twice a day. When I asked her about it, she simply said she wanted to get in shape, to feel better about herself. I wanted to be supportive, so I didn't push it. But then there were the phone calls. She would get calls at odd hours, and whenever I was around, she would quickly excuse herself to take them in another room. When I asked her who she was talking to, she would say it was just a friend from work or her mom. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I realize how naive I was. The breaking point came one Saturday afternoon. Julia had gone out shopping with a friend, and I decided to stay home and catch up on some work. After a few hours, I got bored and decided to do some cleaning. As I was tidying up the bedroom, I noticed her phone on the nightstand. It was unusual for her to leave it behind. She was always glued to it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to take a look. Her phone was locked, but I knew the password. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, feeling a wave of guilt wash over me. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I wouldn't find anything, but I was wrong. As soon as I opened her messages, my heart sank. There were dozens of texts from a number I didn't recognize, all from someone named Chris. The texts were explicit, filled with details of their encounters, how much they missed each other, how they couldn't wait to be together again. It was clear that this wasn't just a fling, this was a full-blown affair. I felt sick to my stomach as I scrolled through the messages, each one more damning than the last. I couldn't believe what I was reading. How could she do this to me, to us? We had built a life together, made plans for the future, and now it was all falling apart. I felt like I had been punched in the gut, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I didn't know what to do. When Julia came home later that evening, I confronted her. I was angry, hurt, devastated, and I demanded answers. At first, she tried to deny it, but when I showed her the messages, she broke down and admitted everything. She had been seeing Chris for months. He was younger, more exciting, made her feel alive in a way that I apparently didn't anymore. I was stunned. This wasn't the Julia I knew. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger. I asked her why. Why would she throw away everything we had for some fling? She told me that she hadn't meant for it to happen, that she still loved me, but that she had fallen out of love with our life. She felt trapped, like we were just going through the motions, and Chris made her feel like there was still excitement in the world. I begged her to end it, to work on our marriage, to try and fix what was broken, but she was already gone. In her mind, she had made her decision. She told me she was leaving, that she needed to figure out what she really wanted, and that maybe we both needed to move on. And just like that, she was gone. She packed a bag and left that night, without looking back. I watched her drive away, the taillights of her car disappearing into the darkness, and I felt utterly alone. The weeks that followed were a blur. I went through the motions, waking up, going to work, coming home to an empty house. I barely ate, barely slept. My mind was constantly replaying the events of that night, trying to make sense of it all. I kept hoping she would come back, that she would realize she had made a mistake, but she never did. I found out later that she moved in with Chris, the younger lover who had turned my world upside down. They were living together, playing house, while I was left to pick up the pieces of our shattered life. I tried to move on, to focus on myself, but it was hard. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of her, our wedding photos, the couch we picked out together, the coffee mug she used every morning. It was like living in a ghost town, haunted by memories of a life that no longer existed. Eventually, I decided I couldn't stay in that house anymore. It was too painful, too filled with memories of a life that had been ripped away from me. I sold the house, packed up what little I had left, and moved to a new city. I needed a fresh start, a place where I could rebuild my life without the constant reminders of what I had lost. In the new city, I tried to start over. I found a new job, made new friends, and slowly began to piece my life back together. But the pain was still there, lurking beneath the surface. I couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal, the anger, the hurt. I tried dating, but every relationship felt hollow, like I was just going through the motions. I couldn't trust anyone, couldn't let myself get close to anyone, because I was terrified of being hurt again. Months went by, and slowly, the pain began to fade. It didn't disappear completely, it never would, but it became more manageable, more bearable. I started focusing on myself, on the things that made me happy. I took up new hobbies, started going to therapy, and gradually, I began to feel like myself again. But there were still moments when the memories would come flooding back, when I would see something that reminded me of her, and the pain would hit me all over again. It was like a wound that had never fully healed, always there, just beneath the surface.